for the last 6 months. It started when I noticed access logs at odd hours, files copied without explanation. I installed tracking software, security tripwires, and a watchdog protocol hidden inside our flagship product's interface. What I found: emails, documents, meetings I hadn't been invited to, planning sessions where my own ideas were presented without my name attached. It wasn't just betrayal. It was theft, polished with nepotism and served with a smile. I had been building the future of the company while they were building a future without me. So, I stopped trying to fight for a seat at a table that was already being cleared for someone else. I prepared instead, not out of vengeance, but self-preservation. Because the product they plan to showcase tomorrow, the AI-powered logistics optimization tool that secured our biggest contracts, was my creation. Not my father's, not Noah's, and certainly not theirs to steal without consequence. Back in my apartment that night, I didn't cry. I didn't rant on the phone or post a vague status update online. I ordered Thai food, opened a bottle of wine, and pulled out my private backup drive. On the screen, a countdown timer appeared. Demo mode activation in 10 minutes. I smiled because they had no idea that tomorrow, in front of our top-tier investors, the system would ask for one thing before it could run: authentication from the original developer. And that developer was no longer in the building. By 9 a.m. the next morning, my phone had already buzzed 17 times. I didn't answer any of them. Voicemails from my father, 2 from Noah, 1 from Angela, the head of investor relations, and another from an unfamiliar number I recognized immediately as the private line to the boardroom. I let them pile up like unread warnings. At 9:30, I poured myself a coffee, stepped out onto my balcony, and pulled up the live investor feed on a private backup tablet, the one I'd used to simulate the platform's AI decision trees. Ironically, the very work they planned to showcase as Reed Industrial's proprietary innovation. The camera feed was crystal clear. I watched from a distance as my father stood in front of a polished screen with the words Project Helix gleaming behind him. He wore his signature red tie, the one he reserved for big meetings, and began his speech with practiced confidence. As many of you know, Reed Industrial has always been a pioneer in logistics solutions, he said. But today, we're introducing something revolutionary. The presentation began as planned. A smooth, auto-guided interface explained how the AI system worked, how it could learn from warehouse behaviors, optimize routes, reduce delays, even cut costs by up to 27%. Then came the moment. 10 minutes in, the screen flickered just once, then again. My father paused. A few investors shifted in their seats. The interface blinked twice, and a new screen appeared, not the one they had rehearsed. Authorization error. Original developer credentials missing. Please insert valid security token to proceed. I could practically hear the silence through the screen. My father tapped the touchscreen once, twice, then looked over at the tech lead, who sat frozen behind his laptop. "Is this part of the demo?" one investor asked. Then the screen changed again. Unauthorized use detected. Developer has initiated Ethical Compliance Protocol 7.4. Internal system logs now accessible to all stakeholders. And just like that, the logs began scrolling. Every timestamp document, every late-night access, every unauthorized meeting between Noah and a third-party consultant discussing licensing agreements before my official termination. Even email threads debating when to replace me. Not if. I sipped my coffee and tilted the screen back, letting the morning sun warm my face. What I had built wasn't just smart software. It was a sentinel, one that watched and learned, not just from code but from people. It didn't just track movement inside a warehouse. It tracked behavioral patterns, including internal misuse and ethical red flags. It was designed to protect systems from anyone, even its owners, even its creator. At 9:42 a.m., my father finally called again. This time I answered. "Emma, he said, his voice low, like he was trying to stay calm in a room full of chaos. What did you do? I didn't answer right away. You activated a lockdown on our most important presentation, he continued. Do you have any idea what this looks like to investors? I do, I said. It looks like your company tried to erase the one person who made that system possible. There was a long silence. I didn't know Noah went behind your back, he finally said. That wasn't the plan. I let that sit in the air for a second, but cutting me out entirely was the plan. Right? More silence. You didn't even ask me, I continued. You just decided I was no longer needed. Like I hadn't sacrificed 10 years to build what you now call Project Helix. Look, he said, softening. Maybe we rushed things. There's still a seat at the table for you. No, I said firmly. There isn't. Not anymore. I hung up. That's when the next notification came through on my private interface. Ethical violation report, sent to stakeholders. Complete. It wasn't about destroying the company. It was about revealing the truth. I had set the system to copy the full internal ethics report to every investor's inbox. Not out of malice, but transparency. They deserved to know what kind of leadership they were backing, what kind of behavior was being hidden behind red ties and boardroom smiles. By 11 a.m., 3 board members had resigned. 2 investors pulled their offers, and the rest requested an emergency ethics review before proceeding with any further funding. I didn't celebrate. This wasn't a victory. Not yet. But it was clarity. For the first time in months, I wasn't questioning whether I was overreacting. I wasn't gaslighting myself into silence. I had told the system to protect itself, to protect what we built, and it had listened. People always see the outcome, success, disruption, retaliation, but rarely do they see the years behind it. The quiet sacrifices, the exhaustion that never quite leaves your bones, the Sunday dinners missed, the relationships strained, the nights you fall asleep at your desk with code still dancing behind your eyes. That was my life for nearly a decade. After finishing my degree in systems engineering, I had offers from Google, IBM, and 2 venture-backed startups. But I chose the family business, Reed Industrial Solutions, because I believed in what my father had built. I believed I could take it further. Back then, the company was struggling to modernize. My father didn't understand automation, machine learning, or even cloud architecture. He was old school. He believed in handshakes, ledgers, and loyalty. Or so I thought. I didn't come in demanding a title or salary. I started low, project consultant, then lead developer, then tech strategist. Each year I built something new. Inventory mapping software, warehouse automation, smart routing systems, and eventually Helix, though that wasn't its name then. Helix began as a side project, an AI trained to detect inefficiencies in supply chains. But over time, it evolved. It started predicting disruptions before they happened. Shipment delays, vendor fraud, internal leaks. It wasn't just optimization, it was protection. I showed it to Noah once, back when he was still just the kid trying to help out. He'd come to my office late at night, watching me build neural pattern maps on whiteboards and scribble logic chains in the margins of my coffee-stained notebooks. This is insane, he'd said once, watching Helix reroute a delivery chain in real time after predicting a labor strike. It's like the AI can see the future. No, I said. It sees patterns, and it learns. At the time, he looked at me with awe. That was before the board meetings he started attending alone. Before he stopped returning my messages. Before the whispers started. I didn't want to believe it. Not even when I found the first signs. A copy of my framework shared under Noah's credentials. A budget line item for software scaling I hadn't approved. Meeting invites to Helix-related demos, with my name absent from the list. At first, I told myself it was a misunderstanding. That Noah was just clumsy or eager. That Dad didn't know. But when I brought it up gently, respectfully, my father looked me in the eye and said, Maybe it's time to let your brother take the lead on some of these initiatives. He's got a knack for business. A knack. That's what he called it. That night, I stayed in the office until 3 a.m. I stared at the source code of my own creation and thought, what if they really try to take this? What if they lock me out completely? So I began building in safeguards, not malware, not sabotage, just a quiet line of logic that said, if the authentication protocol doesn't match the original developer keychain, the system locks down automatically. No drama, just data. I also began encrypting copies of every major development milestone and saved them off-network. And I waited. Now, in the aftermath of the failed investor demo, all of it had triggered exactly as intended. Noah had called 5 times already that afternoon. I didn't answer. But I listened to one of his voicemails, just to hear the tone. "Emma," he said, voice tight with tension. "We need to talk. Look, I know things got messy, but we didn't mean to shut you out. It was Dad's call, okay? I was just going along with it." That line echoed in my head for hours, because going along with it is how betrayal begins. Not in malice, in silence, in the choice not to speak up, not to intervene. By 4 p.m., Angela from Investor Relations emailed me directly. "Emma, several stakeholders are asking if you'll be returning to complete the Helix demo. There's a proposal forming to offer you an advisory role and a revised compensation package. Please consider responding within the next 24 hours. The board is open to renegotiation. Regards, Angela F." They were scrambling. And I could have taken the offer. I could have walked back into that office, negotiated equity, a new title, a fat check, smiled politely, and pretended we were all on the same team again. But I didn't want a seat at a poison table. I didn't want hush money or a fancy title that meant nothing. I wanted something more valuable: integrity, recognition, and the power to ensure that what I built would never be used against me again. So I crafted my response with precision. "Angela, thank you for your message. I'm open to a discussion, but I won't be returning under a temporary advisory title. I'm prepared to resume leadership of the Helix project under terms that include formal recognition as its creator, 51% IP ownership, and veto power on ethical use cases. Otherwise, the system remains inaccessible. Kindly, Emma." Reed. I hit send and closed the laptop. This time I wasn't waiting for permission. That evening, I got a dinner invitation. It came in the form of a short formal message from my father's assistant. "Emma, your father has requested a private dinner to discuss the future of the company and your role in it. He hopes you'll join him tonight at 7 p.m. at Lavinia. A reservation has been made under Reed. Monica Levine, his favorite restaurant, the same one where we celebrated the company's first $10 million quarter. Back when I still believed this business was a family and not just a brand, I considered ignoring the message. But then I remembered something an old mentor once told me. Never walk away from the table when they're finally ready to admit they need you. Let them say it out loud. So I dressed sharp, arrived exactly on time, and found my father already seated at a corner table, wine glass in hand, menu untouched. He stood when he saw me. "Emma." I nodded. "Dad." No hugs. No fake warmth. Just silence as I took my seat across from him. He studied me as if trying to read the expression I wasn't showing. "You look well," he offered. "Strong." "I am." He cleared his throat. "You've made quite an impression the last 24 hours. "Funny," I said, tilting my head. "I've been making impressions for 10 years, you just weren't looking." That shut him up for a second. Then came the sigh, the one I knew too well, part frustration, part forced humility. "I'll admit we made some miscalculations," he began. "Pushing you out was premature." I didn't respond. I wanted to see where he was going, whether he was here to apologize or to negotiate with the same manipulation he used in boardrooms. "You've built something extraordinary," he continued, "and we want to bring you back in." Noah agrees. The board is prepared to offer you a co-director position, same salary as him, shared oversight of the Helix project, and a retroactive bonus package. I raised an eyebrow. That's cute. He frowned. Emma. No, I interrupted. Let's not pretend this is about fairness. You didn't come here to offer balance. You came because the system won't run without me, and the investors are threatening to walk. I leaned forward, my voice quiet but firm. You came because you lost control. He stared at me, jaw tightening. You're not being reasonable. Reasonable? I echoed. Dad, I spent a decade building your vision into something that could change an industry. I gave up everything, security, relationships, time. And when it started working, when it became something real, you handed it to Noah like participation trophy. His eyes narrowed. You're overreacting. Noah may not have your technical skill, but he has vision. No, he has ambition. I snapped. And you handed him mine. For a moment, we just sat there. Two people who used to be father and daughter, now just two professionals negotiating ownership of the same empire. He finally said, "What do you want?" There it was. The question I had waited for. I already told Angela, I said. I want 51% of the Helix IP, formal recognition as its creator, oversight of every implementation, and $5 million in retroactive compensation for the unauthorized use of my work. His jaw clenched. That's outrageous. That's generous, I said. I could have gone public. I could have let those internal logs hit the press. You wouldn't do that, he said with a flash of the old, wouldn't I? I leaned back in my chair, calm as ever. You raised me to protect what I build. You just never expected I'd apply that lesson to you. He looked away for the first time all night. Maybe it was shame, or maybe he realized that for the first time, I wasn't the daughter trying to earn his approval. I was the woman who no longer needed it. The check came. He paid. As we stood, he said quietly, I'll have legal draw up the documents. I nodded. Good. And Dad? He looked up. I'm not coming back to be your employee. I'm coming back as your equal. Don't forget that. He gave a slow nod. Understood. I walked out into the night, the crisp air hitting my face like a reset button. The street was quiet. My phone buzzed with a message from Angela. Board has been informed. Drafting new terms. Congratulations. I didn't smile. Not yet. This wasn't over. But the balance of power had shifted, and for the first time in a long time, I was exactly where I needed to be. By Monday morning, the building looked exactly the same. But everything had changed. The front desk staff stood a little straighter as I walked in, and the security guard, Marcus, who used to nod without looking up, gave me a sharp, respectful, "Good morning, M. Reed." I nodded back, wondering how much he knew. Probably more than I thought. In my hand, I held a fresh access badge. The lanyard read, Exec, Co-founder, in bold silver letters. The elevator ride up felt strange, familiar yet foreign, like walking through a house you used to live in before it was remodeled without your permission. My floor, formerly the innovation wing, had been rearranged. My office had been emptied, and the nameplate on the door now read, Noah Reed, Director of Strategy. I didn't bother knocking. Noah was behind my old desk, typing furiously, looking like a man on the edge. The second he saw me, his face tightened. Emma. Noah, I said calmly. Looks like you've made yourself comfortable. He stood up. You've got some nerve showing up here after what you pulled. I gave a tight smile. Funny, that's exactly what I thought when I found you presenting my work as yours. He scoffed. We were a team. No, I interrupted. We were never a team. I brought you in. I coached you through your first year. I gave you access to everything I created, and you used that trust to undermine me. I didn't plan this, he said defensively. Dad said. Don't, I cut in. Don't put this on Dad. He may have given the order, but you executed it. He sat back down, exhaling through his nose. So what now? You're just back like nothing happened? I'm back, I said. But nothing's the same. I've reviewed the new contract. I have majority control over the Helix IP. All implementations run through me, and you are no longer authorized to touch the system." His mouth dropped slightly. "That's ridiculous. You can't just—" "I can," I said, placing a printed copy of the agreement on the desk. And I did. He stared at the document like it had insulted him. "So what, you're gonna be Dad's equal now?" "Noah," I said gently but firmly, "I'm not interested in being Dad's equal. I'm only interested in protecting what I built. If you want to work on your own projects, fine, but Helix is mine now, officially, permanently." He sat in stunned silence. I turned to leave, then paused in the doorway. "You could have just asked, you know. If you wanted to be part of it, I would have let you in, on the right terms. But instead, you went behind my back. You let Dad talk you into believing you deserved something you didn't build. That kind of thinking, it has consequences." I walked out without waiting for a reply. Later that day, I sat in my new office, Spartan but functional, flipping through Helix's live reports. Since the lockdown had lifted, the system had resumed its predictive analysis, seamlessly adjusting warehouse workflows, vendor flags, and fleet routing across our logistics network. It was better than ever. Smarter, more intuitive. At 2:15 p.m., Angela knocked and entered with a list of upcoming client demos. "We've had 4 new inquiries from enterprise clients since this morning," she said. "Apparently, word got out that the system has a real-time ethics protocol embedded. They want it badly." I nodded. "Schedule them, but under the new transparency model." Angela raised an eyebrow. "Transparency model?" "Yes," I said. "Every implementation of Helix from this point forward includes 3 things. 1. User accountability logs. 2. Internal ethics tracking. 3. Quarterly compliance audits. I won't let this technology become another corporate weapon." She smiled, a little surprised. "That's bold." "It's necessary," I said. "I've already seen what happens when power is handed to the wrong people." After she left, I leaned back in my chair. The office was quiet. For the first time in weeks, I felt something I hadn't in a long time. Control. Not over other people, but over myself, my work, and the future of what I had built. I checked my inbox. There was one message waiting from my father. "Emma, I reviewed the documents. I understand the terms. You've made your position clear. For what it's worth, I'm proud of what you've built, even if I didn't show it the right way." "Dad," I didn't reply. Not because I didn't care, but because sometimes silence says more than 1,000 words. And in that silence, a boundary had finally been drawn. This was no longer just a business. This was mine. 3 months later, Helix was everywhere. We had just closed our largest contract yet, an international supply chain conglomerate spanning 6 continents. Helix would be the central nervous system for their logistics infrastructure, monitoring every node in real time, predicting risks, preventing breakdowns, and doing it all under our new ethical framework. Every contract included clauses I had personally added: protections for employees, data integrity safeguards, automatic reporting protocols that triggered when misuse was detected. I didn't just want to change the system. I wanted to change how systems were run, and the world had taken notice. I was invited to speak at industry conferences. Forbes published a feature titled "The Woman Who Rewired the Game." My inbox flooded with invitations from venture capitalists and offers to buy me out. But I wasn't selling, because this wasn't about cashing in. It was about owning what I had built and protecting it fiercely. Inside the office, the atmosphere had shifted. People were more cautious around me at first, unsure of what my return meant. But I made it clear, I wasn't there to punish anyone. I was there to lead, not with vengeance, but with clarity. "Noah." He kept his distance. After the dust settled, he stepped back from his executive role and took on a less visible position: strategic partnerships liaison. A demotion in spirit, if not in title. He avoided direct contact, though I caught him once standing silently outside the Helix operations room, watching the monitors flicker with real-time optimization data. His face was unreadable. My father kept up appearances. He congratulated me publicly, praised my visionary leadership at shareholder meetings, and even posed with me in the company's press releases. But behind closed doors, our relationship remained professional. Not cold, but distant, like two former generals who had survived the same war but no longer fought on the same side. And that was okay. Because some scars don't need to be fixed, they need to be acknowledged, so you can move on with your armor intact. Then came the day that brought it all full circle. I was scheduled to speak at the company's annual Innovation Summit, a high-profile event where our biggest clients, stakeholders, and partners flew in from around the world. Backstage, I reviewed my talking points, took a breath, and stepped onto the stage. The lights hit me. Dozens of faces stared back, but I wasn't nervous. I was ready. 3 years ago, I began, this company nearly lost its future. Not to competitors, or market crashes, or tech disruption, but to something much harder to see: internal betrayal. There was a pause in the room. Betrayal doesn't always look like sabotage. Sometimes it's quiet, a meeting you're not invited to, a decision made without your input, a credit line with your name removed. A few heads nodded, others stiffened. I didn't fight back with lawsuits or headlines. I let the system I built speak for itself, because I trusted it to tell the truth. I paused, letting that settle. And here's what I've learned. You have to protect what you build. Not just the code or the contracts, but your integrity, your ideas, your boundaries. More nods now, eyes locked in, because if you don't protect them, someone else will take them. And they won't ask. They'll smile while they do it. They'll say it's business, that it's nothing personal. I stepped forward. Make it personal. The room was completely still. Helix didn't just predict threats, it identified patterns. And those patterns told a story. A story about what happens when innovation is treated like property instead of purpose. Another beat of silence. I'm not here because I played politics. I'm here because I prepared. Because I stayed true to what I knew was right, even when it hurt. And that's what I want to leave you with today. I looked across the room at the executives, the engineers, the interns. At some point, someone will try to take what you've built. They'll underestimate you, ignore you, replace you. I let that hang in the air. But remember this, power doesn't lie in who gets the credit on the first page. It lies in who controls the next chapter. Applause broke out, not thunderous but sincere. After the summit, a young woman approached me, nervous, excited, eyes full of ambition. Maybe the way I used to look at my dad. "Miss Reed," she said, "what's the secret to doing what you did?" I smiled, handed her the mic they'd just taken off me, and said, "Build something they can't take from you and make sure it knows exactly who you are." That night, I got home late, tired, wired, fulfilled. As I kicked off my heels, my phone buzzed softly. A quiet notification from the Helix system. System integrity secured. Threats neutralized. Protections active. Creator authenticated. I smiled. Not because the war was over, but because from now on, I'd never have to fight it unarmed again.